Hey, welcome back to the John Hallett podcast. It's been a little bit. We've had a whole lot going on and just got sidetracked on this thing with a whole lot of other projects. And as usual, I've got Josh, my show host, joining me today. How are you, Josh?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm fantastic. Yesterday's teaching marathon with kids has left me tired. You don't realize kids are hard to coach. I mean, they're fun to coach. Let me say that. They're fun to coach because they've got endless energy, and I don't.
Yeah, the little kids are more mentally draining, I feel, than teaching an adult class. I was kind of have said teaching a kids class is like teaching two adult classes.
Really?
Maybe more like the mental energy
Sure.
to teach a kids class versus
It relaxes
the adults.
me. It relaxes me.
Yeah, they're super fun.
Yeah,
The kids are great.
It's fun.
So yeah, it's one of those things. I don't know, different things. I'm just so tired of so many things. Even I put out a short, I guess you'd call it a John Hallett podcast. You know, I've done a few shorts on YouTube and the rest of the social media outlets nonsense. I think my favorite one is like get off of this right now.
Yeah.
Some people just get sucked in. It's great and it's terrible. You got to really, even adults need to set a timer. He'll just suck you in, and as we were talking about AI, suck you in even more. That's awesome yet scary. But
I know.
I put out a the pussification of America. Like, I'm just sick of coddling around, or that might not be the right word, probably pussyfooting around, so much of advertising as a business. I'm like, I'm just sick of it. We're trying to raise good people, teach them how to defend themselves. I think it's a necessary skill, more so than even team sports. I think they're fantastic, but I think more parents should be getting their kids in and doing this. And it's not a feel good course. It's like, get them in there, even if it's once a week, that they're ongoing doing some sort of self-defense training to build themselves up. I don't know what you think of that.
I do. I would love it if it was part of curriculums in schools. You know what I mean? I would like that, because I think there's a value in learning how to protect yourself and seeing a fight happen before it happens, because people will commit violence whether you want it or not. You don't get to choose that day. You know what I mean? They're just going to do it to you. So being able to just see that before it happens is important. I mean, it's super important, because you don't know what you're going to do in the fight. Is it fight or flight? Do you freeze? Do you run? Do you face them? And if you can train somebody to just start doing something, just get the hands up, turn into it, right? It changes their odds, their chances of winning or survival. There's really no such thing as winning a street fight. I've learned from you, like there's no real chance here to win a fight. Most times, if it's a street fight, they're ambushing you. You know what I mean? So you need to see it, and I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think you should clarify that. I mean, you can quote win and still be injured. There's so many factors in there, and then you've got the legal aspects of any type of altercation, which is might be worse. I mean, in different aspects, it's worse. It's like, that fight might take 20 seconds, or that, situation where you had to draw your firearm and make that ultimate decision of somebody, coming at you with a knife. And, that was 20 seconds, and it could be, a couple of years in a court case from,
the time disparity there, right? Somebody attacks you for 20 seconds and they spend the next 6 years trying to fight it in court. And these things get delayed and stuff. And then you have to
just
pay
the
for
mental
it,
anguish. Right? The delays of like, oh, we got a court date in 6 months. Like, you got 6 months of anguish. So there's just so much to it. It's so different. I mean, and that's where, what we wanted to talk about today was, the ClearSky.Training method, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. I don't like to call it anything, but, kind of what we do. It's just, it's self-defense. It's, no way. Like, it's Bruce Lee, it's MMA, but self-defense is so different in so many aspects than what's popular today of being the UFC, MMA, BJJ, and those things are known. You're going to a
Yeah.
tournament, you're training for a tournament, you even know you're going to class on, such and such a day at such and such a time. Oh, maybe I'm not going to do super heavy deadlifts the day before or right before a class or, as a second workout. You
And
never know.
You also get to study your opponent. You can watch video. It's
I mean,
a no, and
especially
that's
at
what
a
you're
high
saying.
level,
Yeah.
you can watch video, and there's so much prep that goes into that. It's so different. That's where I think Krav Maga gets a bad rap, and misunderstanding, I think, from a lot of people. And there's a lot of novices out there, and there's a lot of people that people forget. Krav Maga lost its trademark. That's something that drew me into Krav Maga 20 plus years ago, that you were told you could fail, and we were trying to have quality and not quantity. I was like, absolutely. That's the kind of association I want to be involved in. And it's just gotten watered down, and you got people, that aren't qualified to teaching or having a real full understanding of the system and what self-defense is and what competition is. We can borrow from it. It's awesome. I think that's one of the things Joe Rogan says about Krav Maga, that, it's not pressure tested. Well, it's different in the aspect that we're not going to do a tournament. We are kicking to the groin. We are, eye gouging or doing whatever else, grabbing the groin. I mean, these are all things you can think of in training, but if you don't think about it, you're never doing it.
Yeah.
We can simulate a whole lot, at least the conscious thought of I'm going for their groin, that type of stuff. Are you laughing because I whacked you in the groin yesterday?
Well, I might have put my elbow into something soft, and the next thing I know, a knife was out. So
I think it was out before.
It may be, but we do pressure test it. That's where he's wrong. I mean,
that's where
all the time. I mean, even if I think I'm winning sometimes on someone, they pull a knife or a gun, and then suddenly, instead of finishing it the way I could have, maybe. And it's different in that you're not playing to win, because in sports you're playing to win. In real life, you're playing to get out of there, and you have to do anything it takes to survive. And people don't understand the level of ferocity and the level of like this desire to survive, right? That's what makes it so different. This stuff is meant to actually get you out of a horrible real life situation.
Yeah,
that can happen at any moment.
Yeah, I mean, in Krav Maga, it's testing at a high level. That there's way more pressure testing. There's way more, fighting than the basic levels. If you've just seen, basic intro, for the person that's a newbie in anything, that's what we're not pressure testing them to the level that we're pressure testing intermediate and advanced students, especially at a good gym. Every good Krav Maga gym is sparring, is fighting, is trying to be obviously as safe as possible with self-defense attacks, that we're not killing each other. I mean, and even like the fist suits are, the guy's not as mobile, or the red man suit, is a better example, as mobile as a real fighter, being in this padded suit and trying to be protected. And it's not like you can't move in those things like you can that you normally would. So
sure can't
there's that level of, understanding that I'm not blasting in the groin and, elbow strikes to the face and that type of stuff. You got to be safe in your training. I mean, even in the US, there's a referee there for your safety. When things have gone bad, that's, an important aspect of everything, as nobody really wants to die in a tournament or anything. But when we're talking about the street, man, if things go bad there, you're unconscious. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
And that's something that's really huge. People don't, understand that, maybe in that MMA mindset of, I'm going to tap out. I learn a lot. It's great. Great. Like, don't get me wrong, folks. I love it. I love just playing around, but
Mhm.
man, you're playing around and you forget you're a concealed carry holder, or you have a pocket knife in your pocket, and that person sees that clip. I mean, guys, don't fool yourself. I mean, every guy knows what a folder is, and seeing that clip on somebody's pocket and they go for it, that just changed what you thought you were in. And we see
Yeah.
that time and time again. Happens to me, happens to everybody. You're working I'm thinking I'm controlling that guy. I mean, that's like a drill we were doing yesterday. Hey, you're on the ground, you were thinking you were controlling this guy, and they have a knife on their waistline pocket,
Yeah.
and that fight changes right then and there. I thought I had this person on the ground and I was just trying to control them, tie them up, whatever, on the ground, but now they go for a knife, and just monitoring the hands.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it gets
huge.
tricky. It changes your game. And are you open to seeing your game being different from the competition? And I think
Oh,
that's where, MMA and a lot of people, can kind of have a misunderstanding
yeah.
of what Krav Maga is, and maybe being around low level Krav Maga people and them coming to their martial art, and they're maybe trying to learn that art, and they're not actually doing Krav Maga, or maybe they weren't actually really any good at it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
their understanding of it is so low level.
Yeah. And
It's tough.
it's, you're going to, the context, you say that everything, it's going to be a different context each time. So you have to start thinking differently than a sport fighter, because you're you're ready for anything, right? You kind of understand what the guy in the ring you have is going to have: two hands, 2 feet, some headbutts, right? Whatever they can throw at you that's on their body. But in a street fight, he could pick up a rock, he could pick up a garbage can lid, right? The other thing is when you're in the ring, it's 1 versus 1. In the streets, it could be 1 versus 3, like that.
Yeah, I
It could
mean,
be 1 versus 8.
that golf video that's going around, the guys that get in the fight pushing match, and one guy ends up punching the other guy a couple times. Um, that's been circulating the internet. We threw it up on our band app for our members to kind of look at, and there were several people around. Not to mention, one of the wives, like very close. I would say contact distance close almost the entire time.
Oh, good
So,
Lord.
that's different, and things you have to be, that's different than being in a ring fight. That
Yeah.
there's other people that could just come up and sucker punch you, and all of those things. It's just different. And I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding. And I think there's a lot of bad Krav Maga out there. And that's another thing with the name that I keep going back and forth. I love it. Krav Maga was always an open system, and
Mhm.
we want to be practical. And that's where, our ClearSky.Training brand, where you can train online, right? I'll throw that up there in the
Yeah.
bottom, how you can get to our site, and a bunch of stuff we're going to be talking about is, it's more like, I think
Yeah.
sometimes at RMSDF, we're more than my original Krav Maga. We've added, IDS with Todd Fossey and other things throughout time, and people you're exposed to from different martial arts. It's, huge. So,
Yeah. I
um,
think so. And you've gone and you've taken all this training, you distilled it into kind of like this wonderful plan yourself. And that's some questions I wanted to start asking you, because now you've got these, you've started to standardize some stuff, at least within your own system, that you thought was working at the time, that you said it was also open. And you go back to that open system, even the way you've been working on your methods, you're still keeping it available. And I think that's where your system could, it's better than Krav Maga. I hate to say that, because really I've taken everything that John Hallett has done over 30 years, and you're showing it to in a pace that can get somebody there quicker, because that's the ability of what you've done, right? You've also distilled some of these best techniques and just mindsets in a self-defense system. So yeah, it's Krav Maga, but really a lot of this is John Hallett, and it's been John Hallett for a long time. I know those skills are out there. really humble in some of those things, but like the level of skill that you're able to show people has been pretty amazing. That's why I'm sticking around. Like it's a real deal system. You know what I'm saying? It is real
Well,
deal.
it's all, I mean, I've had, exposure to great people and, who you train and get influenced by, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to, Coach Thomas, from my high school football. I mean, I had great coaches when I was in high school, and just, a lifelong of kind of doing sport, and going into martial arts and being exposed to that. And, I was just saying to my wife, just the exposure to Taekwondo makes you better at being able to relate to people that have done a traditional martial art. Mm-hmm. It's, I wouldn't say it was wasted time. It was what was in front of me at the time on Nantucket Island. There wasn't, I'm going to drive to the next town type of thing to find a martial art that better suited me. That was, what we were doing. And even back then we would get together and, a couple of us and, do whatever. A guy, Jack Marshall, boxing experience. Okay. I learned to box in the South End of Boston, and let's incorporate, his boxing skill and what he learned over the years with boxing into Taekwondo.
So really? So you were doing boxing in South Boston?
No, Jack did. Jack
okay.
was about, was in my original Taekwondo class, and he was actually my first assistant for Taekwondo. From Taekwondo to Krav Maga. So, we really got in there. Sorry, can you hear that?
No, it's fine. I think it's cute to know that
the dogs. Yeah, somebody just came in downstairs. So yeah, different than the old studio. This is up in the loft. Is my new office in our house.
I really do love the system you've put together for people, man. And I remember asking you one day, I was like, you got to write this stuff down. You gotta.
Yeah, and that's been a mistake of mine. It's like not making enough videos. Yeah. All the stuff that goes into the ClearSky.Training portal, everything that we have there. Yeah. People take it for granted how much work it actually takes to create that. One of our coaches last night was like, "Oh man, I wish I journaled what I thought when I was a white belt and a yellow belt." I'm like, I wish I had video of you at white and yellow, and I might, but just archiving that. I mean, can you imagine archiving every student?
Oh, you better have terabytes. you need a server farm.
I know, but how awesome that would be to look back and see your progress. Like, could you imagine? I mean, that would be, we've talked about that. Like, that would be a great video, but there is a lot of production in there.
I know one thing is just where my hands were when I first started. I mean, I was all over the place. Gaps, spaces, everything I was doing, no coordination. That I remember just being completely lost in what to do with these when I walked in your door.
Yeah, it's tough when you start to come in, and seeing your progress makes people feel a ton better.
Yeah.
That's super hard, and everything we got in the portal. So, we've got kind of a couple shows going on here of talking, bad Krav Maga, misunderstandings. Krav Maga does pressure tests, and that's a huge misunderstanding. We're not going to a competition because how do you grade somebody on, getting ambushed?
I don't know.
Because it's also subjective.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm the attacker on every guy, well, I'm tired by the third guy. What are we going to do it over 3 weeks? Or, that the attacker is fresh every time. Oof. It is so different than just getting the ring 1 versus 1. Yeah. Where Krav Maga is going, I'm getting ambushed. I've spent a ton of time thinking about that, and how you could, really pressure test Krav Maga more than what we do as like a competition. We do those things, with our different things, either in the gym or in a workshop that we're going to do on a Saturday or something, and go, okay, let's see how you work under pepper spray. Let's see,
my gosh.
Let's give you the experience of getting tased, which is one of my favorite videos of you.
Stop. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's great. You guys can find that on our YouTube channel somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to say,
no,
then I lost my thought.
yeah, there's just so much. I mean, that we will pressure test. It's just
Yes.
not in a ring with a competition and an ultimate winner,
Yeah.
because it is subjective to go who escaped the bear hug and then the fight after it. We
Yes.
can just do sparring. We do plenty of that. We do plenty of ground fighting. That's, a resisting opponent, where low level Krav Maga is ramping people up slow and steady. And of course, there's low levels of, pressure testing people's technique in Krav Maga. I think that's a misunderstanding, and that's the problem with bad Krav Maga, and that's sometimes where it makes me want to go away from the name. It's where I wanted to go away from the CrossFit name for years because I was sick of being associated with bad CrossFit. There's fantastic CrossFit and there's bad CrossFit, and that's where we decided to drop that name for that and a few other reasons, but it was mainly being associated with bad CrossFit. And I'm sick of being associated with bad Krav Maga. People have ruined the name.
We'll just call it Hallett self-defense.
No,
what's wrong with
Hammerling is way tougher.
No. It means tiny hammer if you think about it. So we don't need that.
Tiny hammer. It's the tiny hammer system.
I don't know. Watch people love that. Wouldn't that be just the funniest thing? Maybe we'll do some of the spoof videos. Whoa, tiny hammer. Right? And
I'm gonna attack you with tiny hammers.
But you do, like, what I love at our gym, though, is that our coaches know how to start introducing pressure tests into techniques as we have them. Right? We're not crazy with the white belts because really they just need to kind of learn one thing that's going to help them. Right? And there's a certain rate that we give them training at. And as you move up, it gets progressively more and more difficult inside those scenarios, to the point where, just being able to go at 50% sometimes is enough to train you in a way that gets you really prepared for things.
Yeah, you don't need to go full contact. I mean, it's like so many of the comments on YouTube. I mean, people don't even understand when you're in it that it seems faster. The video makes it look slower, but that's a big thing. I lost what I was going to say about what you just said, but you're testing things in Krav Maga, and you've got to get a basic understanding of the technique before you can really pressure test it. Otherwise it's just, you're just going crazy. You have no technique. You got to get a baseline of technique to be able to test them. You've got to have done enough stand up. You've got to have done enough ground and weapon attacks and the whole gamut of what we're training. I mean, just going, somebody could draw a knife. That is so different than Muay Thai and stand up.
Yeah.
You're in the clinch. Great. Well, what if they grab a knife in clinch? Self-defense is such a different animal. We borrow from that. It's great. Like, we can borrow from things that we see working in MMA. That's what Krav Maga is, good and bad out. What's not practical. I've taken plenty of things out of the original Krav Maga system because probability wise, even, different things. I'm like, how much time do we need to be spending on, jump front kick, round kick combination?
You showed me double back kick or something,
like two back kicks that are in like whatever belt it is.
I'd fall. Like under pressure, I would fall, dude. I'd be on my face so fast.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
So, there's just a ton to it. So let's we're already, goodness, like 25 minutes into this show.
I can babble.
Yeah. And we haven't been on this show. Oh, that's the wrong slide.
I'll just get to this.
Yeah. So this is my database on Notion that I use, and I might have to click out of this thing. Sorry, guys, where we're at. If I can just get to Notion or bring this up as full screen, because I don't think it's acting. No, it's just, I've got to find this on my screen, guys.
So what you do is just leave this up and go to the Notion app itself, and that's where you'll make the changes.
Yeah, I think I just got to bring that up in front of me.
There you go.
All right. Technical difficulties. So we have in all of our stuff on ClearSky.Training. This is on our basic level. So if you want to train with us online, this is available on the basic level. All of you guys can also find it on the black belt level. I might have put it in advanced too. I think I made a mistake and I'm like, all right, it's on advanced. I meant to put it on black belt. Let me put it on the black belt so they don't have to click into another course on our online portal. It's just right within that course. You know what Krav Maga is, and a lot of people don't know. It literally means contact combat. Created by Hungarian boxer wrestler Emi Lichtenfeld. That at the start of World War II. I mean, it's contact combat. People. It's not about competition. It's about combat, and you're fighting for your life when you are in that street fight and, I'm just going to put you in a guillotine choke. Well, that could kill me. In MMA, somebody's tapping out on the street. Somebody might crush your airway and you might be left there hoping, the ambulance gets there fast enough, hoping somebody was there to call that ambulance. So, it is so different, and that's where the combat aspect of it, even though it's not like going to combat and all those people that protect and fight for our freedoms. So we'll kind of get into this and skip over, we always say, what is Krav Maga? Do whatever it takes to go home, right? I just want to go home. I didn't want to get attacked. I didn't want to be here. And as we get into this series, it's also the legal aspects that I did not want to fight you. I am not a willing participant in this. As soon as you become willing, you've lost your claim to self-defense. And that might be guys like we've talked about many times on this show and in class. Bring it on. Go ahead, punch me. You've lost your claim to self-defense with those. Thanks. Big principles of Krav Maga. True Krav Maga and what we do at RMSDF and, Clear Sky, neutralize the threat. I just want to neutralize it and get out of there as quick as possible. I want to avoid injury, right? If I'm in that fight, the longer I'm in that fight, the more it could go wrong. I mean, people yesterday with knife, did you have the opportunity to escape? Maybe, maybe not. But when you don't have that, what was I going to say? You're trying to avoid injury. Sometimes the longer you stay in the fight, the more likely you are to get hurt. I think somebody yesterday said to me, I was trying to do some cool guy stuff and now I'm cut. I'm like, yep, you tried to, push it. I forget what they were, trying to go for, probably a control or a submission. And look, now I'm getting cut. I thought I had the submission or, joint lock, whatever it might have been. And I was in there longer, that 30 seconds, that 10 seconds. Now I'm injured. Yeah. One of my favorites, and it was like what you had last Saturday in Peaceful Warrior Training. That's for you guys outside of RMSDF. That's our black belt, our advanced track. For those people that have been through, in the all levels, beginner, all levels type of classes that now I'm really serious about my training. That's our black belt or our Peaceful Warrior track. You upped everybody ahead of you in training.
I got one. I got lucky.
You got lucky. Yeah. I knew the principles of Krav Maga. I was hoping it was one of them. Using an overhand punch in defense of a crazy haymaker, you're defending and counterattacking simultaneously. I mean, that is huge. If I'm just defending a choke, I need to give you something to think about and try to disrupt you in some way. That's a big principle of Krav Maga. Shut down the computer, and it might be, monitor that other hand, defend, counterattack. I might need to be, quote, counterattacking by clinching up and controlling your hands. So it's more than just punching and kicking.
Yeah.
We try to build the system off our natural reflexes, what you're naturally going to do. I mean, it's in our rotation 8 and outside defenses in Krav Maga. Those are natural. I, tell people all the time that, we have our inside defense. I'll see beginners make an outside defense, either 1 or 2 with their hand because it's natural. And then what we see, hopefully you can see it because I just have Notion up in front of me, that a punch is coming outside your hands, and we'll see that person's got a little bit of Krav Maga training, and they'll think, oh, straight punch, and they will try to come around that punch and make an inside defense because they haven't trained enough, and they know straight punch defense, but they put their hand around it when it was just, they were better off as a beginner sometimes. Now they're, fighting themselves because they have some knowledge, but not a complete understanding of that punch defense, that, oh, I can make outside defenses. So that's a very natural one of many that are in the system, strike any vulnerable area. I mean, you see beginners, I'm like, why'd you punch them in the chest? Why'd you punch them in the stomach?
Yeah.
Is that really vulnerable? Attack those vulnerable areas. We see that all the time. Like, why'd you, hit him in the forehead? Target the vulnerable areas. Hit him in the throat. Hit him, in the
Crab ear.
Yeah. I mean, eye strike, punch him in the eye, hit him in the groin. You're going to get a natural reaction from that where, punching somebody in the chest, or, sometimes I see people punching to the shoulder. I'm like, okay, it's not your, your little brother.
Yeah.
You gotta aim and target vulnerable areas.
Yeah, because you got to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, that's number one. And we will use anything in the environment. Is there a chair? Use that. Fire extinguisher. What is around? We're training to use those things.
Coffee cup, if it's there, like everything's a weapon.
Gosh, I mean,
especially when I'm training with you guys, like some of the higher level belts, if something's just there, they'll just grab it. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
No.
Sometimes in class, I'm like, all right, guys, come on. You ran over to where the sticks were. Like, come on.
Hey, but
it's better when you throw it out on the floor and there's just something there.
Yeah.
Like, actually, somebody just last night again, like, was able to disarm the attacker on the ground, and they slid the knife away, but it actually hit the falling mat, I think it was, or the wall. And in that continued altercation, the bad guy went, wait, I think I can reach that knife. And we're like, yeah, I mean, depending on where you're at, if you were in an elevator, hey, that could have hit the car tire and just been close enough. You thought you tossed that thing underneath a car,
bounces right back.
It hit the car tire, and it didn't slide underneath the car, and that attacker was able to regain their weapon. So all of those things, and simply, do whatever it takes to go home. Do whatever it takes to go home. That's the kids, favorite one when I ask them, do whatever it takes to go home. Okay, yes, but give me more. That's definitely a principle of Krav Maga. What else are we doing here?
Yeah.
I think important, like I just told somebody new, hey, I don't really want to call back people that I thought were jerks. We want good people. You got to respect the foundation of the training environment, and people that aren't respectful, like, we don't want them in the gym. Your training partners, they're fellow human beings. Like, they're not, like, some people come in and just treat people like, they're ragdoll and I'm just going to beat you up for me. Like, we don't want you.
Yeah.
Train seriously, give your best effort. It's your partners involved in it. Like, I'm all, good for joking around, and, we're super serious sometimes, and it's a balance, but sometimes people are, hey, I just yelled at somebody the other day. I'm like, come on, let's go. Yeah. Like, you're just being randomly goofy. Like, let's go. Let's be serious. Come on.
Plus, that's my time too. Like, I'm training to train. I don't want to watch a comedy set. I want to go. I want to learn.
Yeah. It's there's so many aspects of it. It's like, all right, knowing, when there's a little bit of good humor and we're all having fun to, okay, we're in a drill. Come on, dude. You're joking around in a drill. Come on, keep it serious, and, just some of our basic rules and etiquette. I don't think I really want to go through all of these on the show. But you guys should all be able to see those or check them out. If you're just listening to the audio version, check it out, get over to YouTube. It'll be there. It'll be somewhere else and somewhere else, X or wherever else we're going to post to this stuff that I just want to get off of. That was your mindset for progress, I think is, really important for people. And that understanding, I mean, again, you could probably talk for who knows how long on just this. I mean, accidents happen, but a lot of times it's people are just rushing, right? They're impatient. They're trying to go fast. And then they end up, punching somebody in the face or, tweaking something. And, that's no good for anybody's progress because you just kind of hurt your partner. Especially if it's a joint lock or something like that, or, okay, great. You popped me in the nose. Now I got to go address a bloody nose. And now I'm not on the training floor for the rest of class or 5 minutes, whatever, slow down. Like you'll get it. Like beginners always go too fast and they want it. It's great. You're excited and I totally understand it. I was that beginner too. And just taking a breath sometimes and not trying to go so fast.
Yeah. Be nice to your partner. People won't want to train with you if you're always just trying to win and beat somebody up. That's not respectful, right?
Yeah.
Help each other learn, I think is the best thing I'm trying to get out here.
Yeah. And it's, don't be greedy.
Yeah. And you're going to learn so much by being the bad guy. Like I've been really trying to concentrate on being a good bad guy to know what kind of attacks are going to come out. Cause I got to be able to give a partner something, but if I know how I'm going to attack you, boy, it became a lot different as the defender. Because I kind of know what they're going to do in that attack. I've done it a bunch of times, right? And I thought that was really good in just kind of trying to slow things down as the attacker.
Yeah. And, that don't be greedy with technique, your progress will come. So I'm like, that's good. It's good for now. You're like, you got to keep working it. It's not going to be high level. Like when you did it 5 times, I mean, the amount of time, like, okay, good. Keep working it. People want it to be like so awesome. And I understand, you want your technique to be good, but the progress will come and it's not going to come in 5 times.
No,
you did it. Good. Keep working it. I got it. The typical guy. Okay. I got it.
It's like instant.
And then they can't do it when we pressure test it.
Yeah.
Okay. You knew it when I said I was going to choke you with a push and push you into that wall in front of you, 5 feet away, whatever it is, it because it's coming. That's what we pressure test all the time. Like, does it work when you're not expecting the technique where, you have to learn the technique, and that's where the misunderstanding or, even we see all the time high level students that are getting up to instructing that they're switching and they don't have a full understanding of a drill or or a technique. But, the next one, don't talk while the instructor's talking. The one before it, ask for help, listen to your coach. It's disrespectful. I come over so many times and the partner's trying to talk over me. Yeah. And my latest thing is like, hey, there's one cook in this kitchen. That's me. They're paying me. Let me talk to them. I'm here. Can you just shut up for a second?
Yeah. Let me quarterback this thing.
On one thing. And so many times we see beginner and intermediate students focusing on the wrong thing with that beginner. I'm like, that's not what I'm focused on. Mm-hmm. Leave them alone. I'm trying to work on this. And then you walk away and then they're like, this and this. I'm like, dude, can you just let them work on the one thing I just talked about? Mm-hmm. Like, let people drill. That is such a problem. If I ask for help, that's another thing, but we see people just talking too much. And some of it, they're just trying to be helpful. But, a lot of times being helpful is just not talking, is just letting people do it and do it some more and get those good ones and those bad ones and offer a little bit of coaching. I mean, that's a huge coaching thing. You can overcoach, just sometimes not saying anything and just letting people work and then feeling when they do a bad one. Right. And they know it. So it's just so many times like, what'd you think of that one? Oh yeah, I feel like, oh, that was bad. I feel like when I feel what I'm doing. Okay. That's the good one. You know, if you're telling them, they're not going to get it until they actually feel it.
Yeah.
You know, we always talk about ask your partner, slow down, you know. I always say, you know, and I got, you know, different aspects of this from John Whitman is just, you know, tell the other person that they're so much better than you. Can you slow down? I'm not able to keep up with you, or I'm not getting this technique. Can you just go a little bit slower on me so I can try to work, you know, this technique? You're kind of giving too much resistance. I don't quite have all the steps down to the triangle, whatever we may be doing. That bear hug, like somebody's just going too crazy. You know, ask them to slow down, you know, tell the instructor like, hey, I'm having some problems here, you know, but sometimes just that simple, slow it down.
I get lost just when I'm about to start, just getting it started. Sometimes I'm just staring at the person trying to get the technique and I'm stuck. You know, that's the worst, but that's how it works for me though.
Yeah. You know, and train at a pace for you, you know, look after your partner, they'll look after you, are some, you know, really good things to help you with your progress. And we could continue down a rabbit hole on mindset and progress, but you know, there's a ton. Do you have the ticker, Josh, on how much time we have?
Oh, we're at 41:36. You can keep going, man. We got 19 minutes, 20 seconds.
19 minutes. So
yeah.
Was that the one I was just on? Nope. So self-defense 101, you know, situational awareness, you know, that is another one that is so different than MMA. Yeah. Can that MMA fighter have good situational awareness? Yeah. If they train it, you know, you have to be training that type of stuff and, you know, looking around. And sometimes just the whole aspect of confidence and carrying yourself, that keeps a ton of people away because you're just walking confidently. You know, the bodybuilder, you know, they might have zero, you know, no skill. They're big and they get their hands on you. They can do some damage.
Right.
But they look intimidating. You know, they carry themselves with confidence. That does a ton, people. Then we're looking like the meek, you know, victim. You know, you've got to carry yourself around is a big part of situational awareness, quote unquote.
So do I need to be around puffing my chest up everywhere I go?
Well, then this like showing bravado and, you know, it's just carrying yourself with confidence. It's not puffing yourself up like you're saying, like, I'm like, here I am walking around everywhere. You know, that you're walking with confidence, you know, versus the person, or, you know, you're looking lost and somebody sees you of like, you don't belong around here. There's a good person to, you know, rob, you know, steal their cell phone, whatever it may be. So yeah, you know, you don't want to puff yourself up and, you know, some guy looks at you and you're like, oh, hey, I'm bigger than you. I mean, that's just, you know, maybe escalating something with somebody, but just having confidence, you know, in the way you carry yourself. When you work out, you carry yourself different. You feel better.
Predators don't want to attack another predator. You know what I mean? They want to attack prey.
Victim, yeah.
That's what so
they don't want any trouble.
If you look like prey, the predator is going to find you. They're just going to find you. So, you know, don't walk like prey. You know, be situationally aware, but don't be paranoid, right? Just be aware, be strong.
Yeah,
walk
I mean,
confidence.
Attackers want an easy thing. They want to go after what, you know, the least amount of resistance, just like every other human being. You know, what's the easy route? I'll just do that. You know, it's like where people, you know, go, God, if these scammers just had a real job, you know, they could make just as much money as the effort that they put into the scam. But no, the scam's easier than reporting to the man 9 to 5. They're like, no, I can just sit at my computer and call old people and scam them out of money.
I'm on my couch. Yeah.
Like, I don't even have to leave my house. That's the easy path. Like, why do they want to actually do a real job? So, the same thing with an attacker. They're looking for the easy target. If you're identifying a threat before it becomes real, if you can avoid it, right? We all even the kids, why go near those kids on the playground that look like they want trouble with you? Just avoid it. Avoid the bully. You see somebody that looks like trouble, avoid it, or just seeing them.
Yeah.
Can go, oh, they see me. They've made eye contact. They're not turning away. Like, yeah, I see you. Okay. That's cool, buddy. You have every right to be, standing there, next to your car in the parking garage. I don't know if you're waiting for your wife. I don't know, just because you look, maybe intimidating or maybe not, like whatever, like, hey, I don't know. Maybe you had a rough day and, you're all disheveled and waiting for somebody and you look homeless, but you're just, kicking back that day, whatever reason.
Somebody comes up and puts money on in my hat that's on the ground, that I got to reevaluate the way I look.
Yeah. Then
I'm just saying.
Then you need to put yourself together. Pick up your hat, first of all.
Avoidance.
Why is your hat on the ground?
Yeah. Right. Well, it's probably because I'm begging for money. But avoidance is always the best form of self-defense. And I really try to put that into some classes because you've really hammered into me. Like, if you don't have to get involved, don't.
Yeah. Right then. And the key point, if you're not there, you don't have to fight. If you can avoid it, then that's the best fight, because you don't have to deal with everything else that went into it. De-escalation and verbal defense, learn to stay calm and use assertive language. That's huge. So many people don't want to do any of our scenario training because they feel like they're a bad guy. I'm not a good actor. I can't act like a bad guy,
Right.
But that is so important, to learn to stay calm and not, amp yourself up and, again, egg the other person on, so to speak, that you're challenging them with what you're saying. You don't have good verbal defense. Like, you just challenged that person. That wasn't de-escalation. There's all of that goes into how we train, recognizing cues, postures that precede violence. Those are huge. And that's one of the big things that when we do scenario training, telling people you didn't look at all posturing that you were going to attack, and teaching people to just act like an attacker, and how those things come on, from just clenched fist to, clenched jaw. There's so many, that's a whole topic. I think we've talked about it before in the podcast. So, that's something that you need to start to see in your training. And that's where what we do is different than just going to an MMA class and that's all you're doing. We're incorporating all of the aspects of self-defense, not competition stuff. They're really not concerned about this. And even if it's just a gloss over, it's superficial. This talk is superficial. There's no, substitute thing actually getting in there. A lot of people are like, okay, I got it. I understand. No, you don't. You need to do 10,000 reps of this stuff, alone.
In just
working scenarios 10,000 times. Not just, this is just helps people along the line, being able to escape, evasion. We talk about moving and positioning. How are you going to walk by that person that's leaning against their car that you don't know? Because I always say, when you, look like you want to fight and you get posturing up, you're challenging the dude that's leaning against the car. I always joke here in Colorado, Park Meadows Mall, is by no means, even though, well, he say that because, there is those things that are going on there from abduction and some things like that, definitely happen there, but it's definitely not like somebody's going to, start a fist fight with you, or I don't know when the last time somebody stole anything from somebody, walking in the parking lot in Park Meadows. You probably know better than me, but there's definitely things that can happen there and have happened that I
there's
know
a
of.
train station there, so it's.
But I always kind of joke around, like, because it's it's pretty pedestrian.
Hey, at
that's
night,
the right word.
At night under those parking lot lights, and you're leaving late working there, like it's a long quarter-mile walk.
People. Yeah, it's a long
to your
walk.
car. It's a long walk,
but
no matter where you work. So,
when you're working through that mall and you're walking through and like looking at everybody like a ninja, like, okay, dude, you're challenging everybody, because that's usually like, the first thing that somebody does. You're like, okay, you're in a scenario, and okay, you're walking around Walmart, you're walking around Park Meadows Mall, and they start, like, everybody that looks at them, they posture up and they get this martial arts, fight stance. Like, dude,
just blend in.
Just
blend in.
Unless somebody was like looking, crazy in front of you, you're just walking around the mall. Stop like posturing up on everybody and getting into a fight stance. You're challenging a dude that was just walking you.
Out, right?
It wasn't even like a guy bumped you and went, "What the F, man?" Then okay, what are you doing from there? Oh, sorry, pardon me, excuse me.
Right.
Like, people start to get all like, "Whoa, dude.
Why
are you making a fist? Why are you look like you want to fight me? We just bumped into each other." But people get all amped up, and that's typical of
I'm first to apologize.
Of beginning to train. But we want to get the heck out of there. That's just so big. Like, not being in it is the best thing. Like,
I always say, learn some manners, because if you act like you have good manners and you bump into somebody, you're just a person with good manners. Pardon me, miss. I'm so sorry about that. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just being a nice person goes a long way. But, and with that one, where you can't always escape, it's not always an option, but definitely something that we want to train. Sometimes I feel like, okay, hey, you walked away from your wife, you walked away from your kid, other things that aren't happening in competition that you have to go, okay, now you're with your kid today, that your evasion is being slowed way down, trying to haul that kid, hold their hand, let's go. How many times people and they don't even see what's going on, and you're trying to move another adult, like, hey, come on. It's way easier when it's just yourself.
I know.
So those are things we're training all the time.
If you got somebody with you, it's so tough. It's so tough.
Oh, it changes it. It changes it so much. Of course, kind of the, maybe the easy one in self-defense 101 is, I need to practice, all of my game, my striking, my clinch work, my grappling, weapons, so much to it. I think a big one is, prioritize simple, effective stress test techniques. And that's stuff your instructors have done. They've, tested these things, like what's working when somebody's actually really choking you. That's, one of the huge things that, will happen. It was happen more often with traditional martial arts being more popular now. Definitely MMA, BJJ are more popular. Of people going, well, I've got another choke defense. Okay, well, I'm going to choke you. Let's test your technique. And then they go, you choked me. And I told you I was going to choke you twice. You said you had a different answer. Well, hey, let's test it.
Yeah.
And they never tested their technique against a resisting opponent that's actually going to choke you.
Yeah.
And that, that's huge. That's a big part of what we do. Let's try it. Let's see how this works. Which one's better.
Right.
And, one of my favorite things is, train how you fight. Keep it simple, be brutal and effective.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess around, and I want to get out of there. Something I was saying to somebody in for a trial class last night, and I forget exactly what she said, but I kind of countered like, well, sometimes, the power of your punch, can really do a lot of damage. But if you don't throw your best punch when you need to throw a punch, that attacker could be coming back at you. It's definitely a learning curve. But man, if I'm going to punch somebody, there's a reason to punch them. So I'm going to throw my best punch, especially if I were ambushed. It's the whole thing that, hey, there was an impending attack. Yeah, I blocked it and counterattacked. You fall and hit that curb and split your skull open. I'm sorry, but I was justified to punch you there. And that was a byproduct, That goes back to, I'm going to forget Dan and Derek's friend. What was that guy's name? The lawyer that was on the podcast. That was really good.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
You need a better
co-host. So bad with names. Yeah.
You need a better co-host. That's honest.
Yeah. So
train how you fight. Yeah, I like it.
And, I think what we've mentioned a couple times on this podcast is legal and ethical understanding of it. Just training yesterday with Eric that I should probably have on the podcast, who's a black belt in BJJ that I train with and a group of instructors train with, every week, going, well, I'm just putting them to sleep. Yeah, that's a big one. I learned that from Jeff Jimmo, different submissions that he had done, fantastic guy. Picked up a ton of things that weren't Krav Maga over the years from Jeff. Now when, as a bouncer, if I just put you to sleep, hey, there's no marks, whole lot to say the bouncers, beat the crap out of me and they're coming back after the bar and coming back after you personally. But when you put somebody in a chokehold, they are justified to do more. We'll have to hit, the next episode of this to cover even more. I mean, we're barely through, the system that we've got kind of written out that, I procrastinated for years of, putting in stuff. It's not, I just love to train, but, really seeing training our instructors here of what we did and things I didn't get, as in any of my Krav Maga training of just trying to put all of this together. I mean, we had very, very low level of, legal and ethical understanding. Krav Maga is like, I was saying to the class, like, hey, they might be showing some wow factor movie trailer things that they're like, stomping on somebody's head and kicking them and doing whatever, in the ambush, and somebody bear hugged you from behind. And, it's a movie trailer. It's getting people excited to see the whole thing. But at, different points, were you justified to continue hitting them? Could you have gotten away? Was that an opportunity, like we said, to escape and evade where you kept going? Is the video going to show, like, could you have gotten away there? There's a door right to your left. Could you have just escaped there? And there's reasons to escape and there's reasons to say no. That guy was 6 feet away from me. If I just turned on me, and he had a knife or drew a knife, I didn't know. I mean, you can go down rabbit holes. There's so many what ifs on all of that type of thing. But, having a basic understanding of, well, yeah, sure, you put me in a choke, but I feared for my life. You just went from a simple pushing match, grappling match that ended in the ground. And it's just a little, scuffle wrestling match. As soon as you go to my airway, I can articulate that I didn't know how long you were going to push on my airway. You could kill me here. What am I going to do? And that's, I feel, a huge thing that, MMA, BJJ totally forget about. That, hey, I can do more now. I can pick up that rock and start smashing you. Like, you have my airway. You have my carotid. You have my arm. I'm not going to be able to defend myself because you have snapped my arm. You've just up the whole simple assault, which we'll get into, and everything else. And, like I say, I suck. I just try to get better and better. You can support the show with our supplements, suckless.co. We've got a lot of great stuff on there, t-shirts and whatnot. There's also a link on ClearSky.Training to our shop for ClearSky.Training. You can get boxing gloves, you can get t-shirts. There's probably Suck Less t-shirts on there. I mean, we've got more stuff, and I hate the social media stuff, and running a business is so much harder than it was 20 years ago, and managing all this stuff, because we've got our shop.rmsdf that's specifically, RMSDF stuff. And I might have some random Suck Less t-shirts, and, like the one I've got on now. I'm just a guy just trying my best. I don't think, you use the word expert. I've got a 30 something years of martial arts, but I continue to think I can get better, and I need to train more, suck less. So, all right, guys, Josh and I could ramble on all day about all of this stuff. And, you got a kind of little sneak peek of that whole thing there. And I'll bring it back real quick just so you can see the whole thing that we're going to kind of go through on the podcast here and discuss, everything. I guess we're up kind of next on, peaceful warrior mindset. That's that advanced mindset, and, our core training categories, one of my favorite things, 5 stages of violent crime. So a lot of stuff that's going to stop, that will come back up here on the show. If you like that, hey, give us a thumbs up, make a comment. That really helps us out, guys. I don't read the comments because it hurts my feelings, because there's mean people out there. And, I'm just doing my thing. If you don't like it, then why the hell did you watch? I'm just trying to share my knowledge to my students is the big reason we do this thing. And if you're an instructor out there and you need a mentor, you want some more help, I'm glad to do that. I have a program for that as well. So, guys, we will join you again. Hopefully we're back on track. Our apologies, moving gyms, and we had a bunch of chaos with that. And, it's been a crazy 6 months. So, and time flies. So we're trying to get this back on the schedule, just like you need to get your workout on the schedule and stick to it. We're going to try to get this out here. And I think we're trying to do a new day and time. I don't know what we were doing before. Do you know?
I don't know. Who ran it for you?
Some guy named Little Tiny Hammer.
It's usually always on Thursday.
Was it Thursday? Yeah, we were doing it on Thursday. See, I'm like, gosh, I can't even remember what day we were releasing the show. I think we were talking about doing it on the weekend.
Yeah. So look out for it. Look out for it. Share it with your friends.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe.
Do all those put these out in the weekends. All right, guys, train more, suck less.